Alright, so we're going to try to take through the whole process of modeling a mechanical style character, less organic than what we've done before. We're going to make a robot, we're going to rig him, skin him, and then put some materials on him. We won't go into UV mapping because he's going to be just mainly metal, and we're going to use separate materials to shade him, and then we're going to take him into Unity and then turn him into a character. So in order to start, the first thing we want to check out is go ahead and create like a skeleton rig. So that's going to create, if I just go into the character human IK and then click on, let me go ahead and delete what I just did just to show you the process again. So when you first open this human IK, there'll be a create skeleton button at the top of the selection. We don't have anything to actually rig yet, but we want to use this skeleton as a reference for scale. So we just click on that, create it, you get all these options for the number of bones that you want. The defaults are fine. And now that we have that selected, we can select this little tiny joint down at the very bottom. It's a reference joint. I'm going to take that and apply, add the whole thing to a new layer because we just want to use it as a reference. We don't want to be able to select the bones. So select that reference joint that's in the center at the bottom, then select layers, create layer from selected. We'll just call it bones. Save that and then turn it into just a transparency layer so we can see it, we can model to it, but we won't actually be able to select the bones. Then we want to create, we're just going to use spheres and boxes and the cylinder to create this entire robot. We're going to base them off of Bender from Futurama. So we'll create a sphere, scale it, just as a something that we can then duplicate. We'll create a cylinder. Now the trick on the cylinder is if we look at it from the top view, we want to be able to take the cylinder and like do some extrusions with it and pull it across. But rather than do an extrusion where it's going to, in case we do use UVs later, and then pull, we could take like and select just these faces and then extrude that and we'd get a straight edge. But rather than mess with that, we want to create sort of an offset cylinder, which will, and the way to do that is we just select that cylinder shape, go into our channel layer editor and then select this input poly cylinder where its subdivision axis is set to 20. We can make it 22 and then you get a flat edge across the top. So now we can select these vertices and just pull them out to the side. So we'll use that cylinder, a 22-sided cylinder, and then we'll create a box. Yeah, I don't have to like make a palette of these things. I can just create them on the fly, but just to show you that we're not going to model with anything other than just these three parts to make it interesting. So let's go ahead and actually, you know what, let's make the sphere the same thing. We'll give it 22 sides. Let's go to the top. And we'll do it on the subdivision on the axis, so we'll make it 22. Yeah, so that'll get a flat face across the front too. Alright, now select that sphere, duplicate it, bring it up to the top, and pull it to the center of your model. Obviously it's too big. We'll go to the front view. So we'll scale it to fit. If you look at the reference for the skeleton, I don't know if you can see this. Let me change my color here to something red, or at least the black there. That'll work. You can see where the neck starts here, and then the head bone, this is the rotation for the head bone up here. Normally you'd probably want that at the base of the skull, but we can move that after we've bound things, because you don't want it rotating around. You want it rotating from the base of the skull like it would on a spine. So we're just going to pull the head up into position to get it roughly the right shape. We'll make it big for now. And we can fix that bone position later. we'll select all of these faces here and use our modeling toolkit, extrude, hit W so that you get everything centered and pull it down. Then go ahead and select just these faces, scale those in just a little bit and pull those up. So we're going to create a bevel here. So let's just go ahead and flatten, just scale it flat. We'll pull that up into position, something like that. Select those and pull them down. And that'll give us our basic shape for his head, with a bunch of extra faces along the bottom that we don't really need, but we can fix that. We can just select, double click to select the entire edge ring, double click, edit mesh, we'll do extrude, W, and just pull it up into the head a little bit. Just create sort of a neck hole. And we'll select this edge loop just by double clicking and pull that up to create kind of a swivel point to rotate on. Then we can delete all of these other edge loops that we don't need on this flat face along the bottom. Now if we delete those, it looks like there's nothing there, but there's actually some vertices. You still see all the vertices when we delete those edges. I can just drag select across the entire object. Anything that won't have a vertex or a line, an edge loop associated with it, if I hit delete, it will delete those points. Everything else that has a face or an edge loop associated with it, a vertex, will stay. So that's how we can go and edit this thing on the fly. Let me select, so actually we've got one there that we're going to get rid of. I can select all of them, delete, and we'll select this edge loop under modeling and edit mesh display and just say harden. That'll give us that. Now another way to get kind of an all over, because you see where I've got this salt shaker edge, it's just the hardening of the edges. It's where I did an extrude. I can select the entire object and then set normal angle under mesh display, and whatever I set the angle to. So right now the way it's set is anything less than 85 degrees will smooth. Anything more than that will create a hardened edge. So I can take it down probably something like 50, apply and close. But because this is less than 50, it didn't smooth, so go back, mesh display, set normal angle, and it's probably like less than 45, so let's do that. And it smoothed everything, and then I can just select this edge and harden that. Mesh display, harden edge. And that will, those normals will actually carry across to Unity and show up. So you want to play around and make sure you get those set up right. You can either do all smooth and then get your hard edges from texturing, but it's good to set it up correctly in Maya if you are getting some weird rendering anomalies on your mesh. We're going to go through some more of that in a sec as I add his visor in his mouth. So in order to add the visor in the mouth, let's duplicate our cylinder and then pull it into place and rotate it on the X. Go to the channel editor, make sure we're at 90 degrees. Oops. $90. Hit enter. Okay. And move that up. Scale it to be the right size, and what we're going to do is make sort of this welding visor shape that's going to stick off the front of his face. Just need to make sure it's the right size. Like that, maybe bigger. Centered, and then the question is how high up on his head does it go? So maybe something like that. All right, now, as I said before, we got this straight edge now that all we have to do is select these vertices right here, pull them out to the edge, and then the same thing across this axis, making sure that we don't select that center point. And then we have that visor shape. We can pull it back into his head along these back edges more. Yeah. Okay. Maybe pull this front edge out some. Then we can take the same shape and use it for his mouth. Duplicate, pull that down, make it smaller. Something like that. Yeah. Now, in order, if you took these and looked at them, they all kind of, there's geometry inside of this, right? So if I want to make his eyes appear to be a welding mesh, if I extrude this, make an edge here and then extrude that back in, I'll end up seeing the shape of his eyes, his forehead coming through, and I don't really want that. And I'll show you why in a sec. But so what I can do is I can select both those objects, mesh, booleans, and union, and it'll turn them into a singular shape. So now you can see where I've got this sliced out part of his head, so that when I extrude this front face back into it, there won't be any of this internal geometry showing through. We'll have to clean these edges up in a second, but I'll show you how to do that too. So then we'll take the same object in its mouth shape, and we'll do an edit mesh, or mesh booleans difference, and that creates this hole where his mouth will go. We'll fix that in a second. But for this, then we can actually, let's fix that now. So we want to select, a quick way to select the entire mouth shape. Go select by face, drag across just that, and then deselect everything that we don't want to select. So now we just have the entire mouth. And in order to deselect, I just hit Control and drag it across. You'll see that little minus sign around the cursor. So I can delete that shape. I can select by object, mesh, fill hole, and that's going to create this blank ingon across this thing. And from that, then I can select, using this MultiCut tool, just select points to finish out the lines. I'm just going point to point and enter. And then one more here. Just do those 4 faces, and then select these. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 5 faces, and then do an extrude W and pull that back into his mouth, like that. So now he's got his. It's a better shape, because what I had before was flat because of the way I used the boolean. Now I get the rounded shape it kind of inserted in. Okay, so now let's clean up these edges, and the same thing on his mouth. Select the entire head and mesh, triangulate. Why did I triangulate? So the reason I did the triangulate is that it's going to help hold these edges, and we can clean up the things that we want, and then lose the things that we don't want. So for this, I can get rid of this edge. Actually, I'll take, I want this line to go straight across. So one thing I can do is I can do a multi-cut across from here to here, enter, and select now just, so I can select these edges that I don't want. Let's see, I do want the center one, and I want one of these to come to it, so I can get rid of that, and I'll take that, and let's see, I want to get rid of that. I don't have to necessarily have it all joined up. what I'm trying to do is just leave something to connect. So now, if I do a vertex delete, and then I can do a multi-cut connect from here to here to get back. Same thing from here to there. And then join this like that. That cleaned up the edge pretty good. Although I may want, let's see. It's kind of like that curve being there in this section, and I could just take these out and straighten that edge out, but I'm going to keep them for now. This one though, if they're close, if you see some like small triangles like this and this, you don't really need them because they're not really adding that much to the curvature, and they're probably actually creating some normal distortion. So we'll delete that. Same thing with this. Delete. Something here. And here. Go ahead and delete this one, and we'll cut across in the opposite direction to here. The multi-cut. Let's see. This. Wait. Don't really need this either, because it's just practically a straight line. I don't need that subdivision. And I can make the art. Let's delete these vertices and see what it looks like. This becomes interesting here. It works though. Let's get rid of this. Clean up that edge. Delete. Could go from point to point here and make this straight. I think what's bugging me is that this doesn't connect. Let's just try and see. It'll work. Okay. We got to clean up these edges along this side. So again, we don't need all of this extra stuff here or here. You can see where they were creating this distortion in the faces. Delete. Same thing here. And here. Probably from here. Wait, I think I liked that on the other side, didn't I? Yep. So keep that. Vertex. This is weird, so I can take my multi-cut and just cut across there, and then lose that edge. Oops, Q to get out of the multi-cut. Delete that edge and the vertex. Let's see. Probably pull that in a little bit. Let me see what it looks like through the wireframe from the side. W. There's their 2. It should go straight down there. See, I'm not selecting 3 for both. Let's select them both. Pull that straight like that. Hopefully that'll look a little better. We'll fix that edge here in a sec. Let's do the same thing we did here on the other side. So we'll do a multi-cut across here. and then delete all these extra points and edges. So delete, delete, there. Lose that, lose that, and that. Then we'll delete the vertices. And we can do our multi-cut, join this back up. Alright, it's getting cleaner. Let's run across the bottom, same thing here. And here. Here. And here. Oops, not that one, this one. Let's see. Delete. Select by vertex, cross, delete them all. Looks pretty good. Fix this edge. Anytime you get sort of an extreme, really small polygon versus a bunch of big ones, you're going to get some normals weirdness. So I just like to kind of like create bigger polygons by deleting the squeezed polys and then doing a multi-cut back across in the opposite direction. Looks pretty good. Let's see now for the mouth. We actually want some of these points, except for maybe these. Although they're not bugging me that much. Let's see. We'll take, instead of doing a cut, get a quit, go to the side view. Squeeze this mouth a little bit in terms of the vertices. Closed. R just on the vertical. Yeah, it's okay. Okay. So what we can do to clean up all of this stuff and make it easier to work with is we'll mesh quadrangulate now that we've got all of our, well, almost all of our shapes. So mesh quadrangulate. That helps clean it up so we can see what needs, if anything, needs some work. So this can actually come down, multi-cut, to here. And same thing. I'm wondering if there isn't a better way to get this line to here. Just do a multi-cut across, and it should straighten out the edge. And then I can do, get rid of these edges. So delete, delete, and then get rid of that point, vertex. Could probably do, let's see. So what I'm looking to do here now is, we got some really close points right there. That doesn't make any sense because we've got like this face. So what's going on is it's drawing this quad face across this point. So we can just take a multi-cut from like this point, get it from an angle here up to here. I can't select. There we go. Cut it. And that should So what's going on there? Got this face. Ah, there's 2 points. Somehow it cut through there. Undo. Let me see if I can get this face to work. So it's like, oh, actually I can take it from here. So multi-cut from this point to there. And then if I do it from here, it's going to cut across this face, but it's going to create a middle point where it was bending. I think. Oh, wrong one. I already have that. From there to there. Notice how it doesn't want to connect. Let me try. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bridge instead. So I'm going to delete this face, hit Q. It's going to create a hole going through. As you can see, there's this inverted face right there on this that we don't want. So delete that. Same thing probably on this side. Yep. So delete that. And there's going to be this little hidden face right there. Which you can barely see because it's so small, but it's in there. Delete that. And what causes that is just where there's a breaking angle that's sort of a concave face. So we can do edge, select to here. We're going to bridge that. And that way we know that we're getting an edge to an edge. And that's going to leave this little blank poly here. So what we can do, actually, do we even need that blank poly? Because we can delete this and then just do a bridge across. Yeah. So we select by face and delete these as well. So now if we do select edge here, I gotta get rid of this face too, where I'd already done the cut. So select this edge and this bridge, and then this edge. It's got to always go across, and then bridge. That fixes. So now we don't have that overlapping edge there. We can do a multi-cut just to make sure that it breaks in the right direction. From here to here. Actually, I just cut across, I think. Yeah, I accidentally selected that face, or that point. Let's do from there to there. Alright, now, what we really want to do is clean up all of this, because some programs don't necessarily like these fanning types polys. So we're going to delete these edges. We want them to go vertical. Delete. That's good. Delete those. And these. And then we can just do a multi-cut point to point down. Like that. And same thing. Same thing. So the reason I'm creating these vertical lines is that it's gonna, he's gonna have these vertical teeth anyway, so why not use the topology to make the shape? Although we have a lot of extra topology in here, doesn't really matter. It's I'll show you why in a sec. So Go ahead and retriangulate this. And you can see where we've got these edge loop breaks and stuff, but if we take and do our mesh display, set normal angle, keep it something like that. Then we're cleaned up a little bit, except for here, inside of his mouth and on these edges. And that's because of these close polys, so we can lose that. Let's do that. So we'll get rid of this, that, and try to figure out which one's going to. Let's lose that. One down, so we can lose this, this, and actually lose this one too. And just keep that outer edge. Let's see what that looks like. That's better. Same thing here. We will, let's see. So it extends down, that's fine. Kind of breaks with the curve of our sort of trash can head, but it helps to reduce the number of edges in that the mouth curve there. So let's delete those. Selecting by vertex, select, why isn't it selecting? Q. Something's going on weird. Only certain parts. It's like I've got symmetry on. Nope. Not there either. So select, vertex. For some reason I can't seem to select these points. What did I do? 4. See how it's only selecting certain points as I drag across, which makes no sense. Maybe not preserve seam. Selected points, highlight, back faces. Actually, I can turn that off. Perhaps I have an edge. Oh wait, something's connected through there, I think. 4, nope. So if I delete that, yeah, that's good. Delete that. I seem to be able to select them now. 4, 5. Yeah, so I can just delete these. Same thing here. All right. Yeah. So let me go back and quadrangulate again. Mesh, quadrangulate, gives us our faces to work with. We're just going to select this mouth shape. And this one. We'll pull it back further into the mouth. We're going to edit mesh, duplicate that face. So now if I select by object mode, I can get just that face. It's gonna, the pivot's down here. If I hit W, pivot's not centered, but to center the pivot, I can just say modify center pivot. I can pull that out. So now we're gonna have this hole for the mouth, but we want to make some teeth. So we could extrude this, W, to give it sort of a thickness. we're going to go ahead and assign a new material to that. Make it, we'll make it a blend. Make it white. We'll delete all by type history here. And make it really white. Crank up the diffuse. Take down the reflection. So there's our teeth, but we want some actual dark lines to create the teeth shapes. So let's do, trying to think of the number of teeth we want to make for them. Probably less is better. So we can insert an edge loop. And go across the center like that. Doesn't wrap all the way around. Oh, I've also got insert with edge flow on. So undo, turn that off, and then that way, whoops, when I insert, it sticks with a shape. For some reason it wants to continue that. That's okay. We can fix with that edge loop. Alright, so select these edges. We'll straighten that out. Just flatten to there. Now this edge loop we want to break because it wraps around in a way that we don't really want. Going up to here, so we can delete that, delete these points. And same thing here. Okay. Take this edge loop and flatten that. I'm just using the scale to get a straight line out of it based on the object or the world axis. So then, let's see what we can do. Let's thin that up. And let's select the outer edge of the teeth. Let's select this ring, double click, so we just get that outer edge, and then we'll do an extrude using the modeling toolkit, and we'll pull out from it like that, just to give it an edge and get it to go into the mouth, but also to create sort of an in loops condition on this. I'm going to do that selection. I just wanted to make sure I was selecting, then do an extrude, pull it out. We're going to shift that, go to W, and then just, for some reason, these edges back here did not extrude out the right angle, but I'll probably fix that just by selecting these, pulling them back a bit. That's fine. Doesn't have to be that great. And this is going to be hidden mostly from the edge. I'm just trying to create this edge loop condition here so I can select these lines. So then we can do insert edge loop, edit mesh, mesh tools, insert edge loop right here. Create a hard line there. Same thing on the inside. Here on the inside. Here. I accidentally deselected the teeth. So then we won't do one here because it's too close, but we'll do one on the next, on the inside. The same thing here. And then we'll make this our outer line. So if we just select by face these, like that, there. That'll be our teeth. So we can do an extrude. Go ahead and do a W and just pull out a bit. And we will assign a new material to that. Make it a Lambert, because we don't want any shininess on it. We'll delete all by type, just to get rid of all these extra options under the tabs. Make it black. Take the diffuse down. And that'll be our, let's make this like black. And then we can select our faces. We can select these around the edge loop here. So we'll go 1, 2, double click, and that'll select all of these edges around the edge loop. And assign that black to those two. Design existing material, black. That way we get our mouth and our teeth. So we can pull that back into his mouth. Something there. Maybe pull it forward even more, like that. Alright, so there's his teeth. Let's see if we can help this edge work better. Select. Now it's trying to smooth on these edges. And we want it to be a hard edge. Probably can cut this, let's see, mesh, or mesh display, harden edge. And instead of this, you can go multi-cut from here to here. And insert mesh display, smooth, or soften edge there. That looks better. This is getting a bit of a pinch, so we can just do a hard cut or a multi-cut here. Same thing here. Breaking. So it's just that shape is a little bit too close, but we'll leave it that way for now, it's fine. Now we want to fix his eyes, so we'll just make this, select this front face for the visor, and then extrude, scale from the center. Then, see how it gets a little bit wide, so we'll just scale it a little bit on the horizontal to make it even all the way around. Extrude, W, shift it in, and you now, because we have this, because we booleaned this thing, we can pull it as far back into the head as we want. So we'll select those faces, edit mesh, and duplicate. And this will give us our back plane for the eye. Modify, center pivot. Pull that out. I'm going to extrude that. W, create a object. Duplicate that. And this will be our front visor plane, and this will be our back plane. So we can assign that black to this back plane. Assign existing material, black, pull that back so that it shows, And then this, we'll make a new material. Assign new material. Make it a blend. Give it a blue color. And some transparency. Leave everything else for now. We're going to take that and move it behind it because we want to be able to put some eyes in here. I also want to take this, let's see, maybe we can do an insert. Let's see if we can insert an edge loop around the edge. Probably not. Let's try though. Edit mesh. Yep. Mesh tools, insert edge loop. Nope, can't do it that way. So what we can do though is we can select these faces. We don't have anything back selected. Use our modeling toolkit, extrude R to scale it inward. Just pull it in a bit, and then we can take and select these edge loops here, and then do another extrude W, so that we create this inner area, and it'll help it look more like a screen when we get our eyes in there. So pull it back, something there. Okay. Now we'll take our sphere, duplicate, pull it, and rotate. Make sure we're at 90 degrees. Scale it down. Should be about halfway out. It's actually pretty good. R, a little bit more. Let's assign our white material, which is the Lambert. So assign existing materials, probably Lambert 1. Nope. Let's make a new one. Assign new material. This one will be a Lambert because we don't want any reflection on it. We want it to be really bright because it's supposed to be like a part of a screen or a LED screen. Make the diffuse bright. Okay, we'll call that white or eye white. Okay, W. Let's make his pupil. Use a box for that. Duplicate W. Pull it up into position. Scale it down. Let's assign a black material, so black. And let's put it where his pupil should be. Make sure we get it centered on his eye too. And then decide how big we want the pupil to be. So let's scale it a little bit smaller. That looks pretty good. So now, because we have these things set up as individual materials, we can combine this object so that it becomes one, and rather than having to modify and edit a map, we can just modify the materials in Unity and be able to change them so we get them to look correct. So let's see. Let's delete all by type. Again, you can do this because we haven't actually bound a skeleton to the mesh yet. Otherwise, we'd do this delete all by type non-deformer history. But all I'm doing when I do that is I'm cleaning up these tabs. We have some poly unite here. If I delete all by type history, it just gets rid of that as a history object. If we do a bunch of tweens or tweaks or something like that, then that'll show up in the mesh. So now we can duplicate this and pull it across. Looks pretty good. And then we can pull our screen forward. So we want that screen to be in front of the eyes. We don't want them to collide with it. So we get that a little bit in front. Go to our side view. Actually, let's pull this screen off. And let's just select the eye black. Trick. Select by vertex and drag across this front vertices and pull them out so that they're in line with the front of the eyes. Just a little bit in front. Then select by object, select this front glass and pull that into position right in front of those. Okay, so there's this head. Let's add the body parts. So let's just make them really rough as a start, because I want to get this thing done quickly and put them into, we can always come back and modify them later. So duplicate your cylinder, pull that in, center it, get it to the right width, a little bit too big. Make sure from the front view that it's in line with the bones that you want to attach it to, so that when it rotates correctly. So here's spine, this is hip, spine 1, spine 2. Probably it's going to rotate on spine 1, so that's pretty good where it's at. And pretty good for the top too. So we'll duplicate that, scale down this part, and make it the lower torso. And it should attach probably at spine 1, a little bit below spine 1 for rotation. And go a little bit above, but we'll make it that long, a little thinner. Duplicate that, pull it up. We're going to make a neck. Which will rotate at the base of the neck joint. We can duplicate that neck and then rotate sideways. Make sure it's at 90 degrees. Scale it to the right width. And then scale it to the right length. We'll cover up the joints with spheres. Duplicate. This will be our forearm. Just a little smaller than the hand. That looks good. Take both of those, pull them across, swap their positions. Get them in the same general position as the other parts. Okay. So there's his arms. We'll put a sphere for his hips. Duplicate that. And it should probably be centered at the hip joint. R, and scale it in a little bit. That looks pretty good. Get it aligned on the side. Yep. Okay. Then we can use that same hip sphere for his shoulders. Get them just a little bit bigger than they need to be and go to the side so we can get them centered. Duplicate for his elbow. Make sure you get it centered on the joint. That looks good. And the same for the hand. Alright. let's add these joints across to the other side too. Just eyeballing the position. They don't have to be perfect. It's centered on the joints. Okay. We're going to leave them without hands. We can come back and add hands later, but for now we're just going to go with the arms and the head and the torso. So let's take his neck, since it's already oriented correctly. Bring that down and get it in position for his leg. Skillet long. Something like that. Skillet a little bit. Alright, duplicate. Let's go to side view. That. Be his legs. Go ahead and pull this down. Use it as a hip joint. Make sure it's in the right position though, and scale. Duplicate that. Scale them both down for the knees. And then for the ankles, make sure you get it centered on the joint. I can take these and duplicate them across. We'll add a box for his feet. Get it at the a little wider. And it's probably okay. Select these vertices and pull them to the bend there. You could take another box, duplicate for the toe. And what we can do is we'll take this face down like that, and take these two vertices, pull those down. We can take these back verts and pull those in and up. Maybe this one can come back a little bit more. Yeah, just to make his feet. Alright, so objects, take those and duplicate, pull them across. Alright, there. That is pretty much all the joints that we need. Alright, we'll get rid of these for now. Delete them. So there's our rough mesh. We can select trying to think of how to combine these so we have less mesh painting to do. So this will be his shoulder, this is his arm, this will be his forearm, and his hand needs to be separate. So let's mesh combine those. Same thing. I'm just minimizing the point, so this will rotate a little bit if there's a hand attached to it. Although it doesn't necessarily have to. We could have another part for the hand, but that's all fine there. The hip can be joined to this. Combine. And the same thing for these. And same thing for all of those two. And then this will be separate. Yeah. Okay, so that helps us a little bit. And what we can do is we'll delete all by type again, history. Then if we go to our Windows, Hypergraph Hierarchy, we see our character reference, which is our bones there, we've selected. What we're interested in is the parts for the head though. So we've got our head sphere. All of this is all grouped, which is good. We need to probably put our eyes. I don't even know why that's. Let's see, what is this? This is our skull. Rename head. The reason I'm naming them is so that it'll be easier to select them when we go to paint weights. Otherwise, they're going to show up as like polysphere, polysurface. It'll all look the same. We won't know what to select to apply. So rename. This is going to be our eye backplane. This is our eye screen. What is this? This is our teeth. We can take all of that, pull it out. Don't need this. This is just a transform, empty transform here. So we can delete those. Here's our, is it right eye? Left eye. Okay, what do we have? This will be our upper chest, our waist, neck, this is our forearm, that'd be our left forearm. Our right arm, upper arm. Our hips. And the left shoulder. This will be our left hand. Our right shoulder. Our right hand. This is our left toe, right toe, and our right forearm. left upper arm, left upper leg, right upper leg, our left calf, right calf, our left foot, right foot, I think that's it. Yep. Alright, let's save this. Save the scene, because if we crash now, we're going to lose some work. So this will be Bender 2. Continue. Go ahead and delete all by type history. Alright, now you can select all of this and go ahead and bind it. Now, another way you could do it is you could take these parts and drag them under each character bone. They'll be parented that way, but I'm going to go ahead and use this opportunity to show you binding in a very rudimentary way. So we'll select the meshes and then just the base bone, the hips. I didn't choose the character, you could do that too. Go under modeling, rigging, and then skin, bind skin. It's going to go and bind everything. Now, the way it's bound is it's going to be blended between a bunch of different bones now. So if we turn off under the layer editor, now that we've got everything bound together and we can reference, we don't want the bones just to be reference, I can turn off the reference part of the layer and select the bone. If we do a rotation on it, see how it starts to distort parts where they're split between bones. Because it's a mechanical object, we don't need to have blending across bones, so we can fix that pretty easily by going and selecting just one of these meshes and doing skin, paint skin weights. We just need to know, we're going to do, see how it's got this gray color assigned across. That means it's sharing weights between multiple bones. And in this case, we don't really care about that. It doesn't need to. So we can assign it to a specific bone. The lower spine is down here. So we can select the upper spine, which is where this thing should start its rotation. Select Replace under Paint Operation. Give it a value of 1 and full opacity and just say flood. That whole thing will go white. So then we can just go and select each object and do the exact same thing. So for the eye, we only want it assigned to the head because we don't have eye bones. So flood, left eye, same thing, head, flood. Upper chest we just did. The waist will be going for spine, I believe. Spine is right there, yeah. So spine, flood, neck, should be neck, flood. Let me see. Yeah, so problem number 1. When we did this bind, I didn't shift the bone position down before I did the bind. So let's take and unbind everything. Skin, unbind. Go ahead and delete all by type history. Let's get this right. Delete all by type history. Take our skeleton, go to the front view. Let's get the bones in position. So for the head, so this is our character neck joint. We don't want to move that. We want to move the head, pull it down, and set where it should be rotating from. So I'm thinking it should probably rotate from about here. Probably every other bone's okay. Everything else I think was in position, or we modeled it in position, so just the head needed to be fixed. So let's select and do a rebind here. So we select all of our objects and select our hips, skin, bind skin. Alright, go ahead and save. And we'll start doing our weights. So we'll just select the eye first. We'll go down the line here, left to right. So skin, paint skin weights. The eye should be bound to the head. Do a flood. Same with the left eye, flood. Upper chest should go to, I believe, spine 2, no, spine 1, flood. Waist to spine, flood, neck to neck. So I'm just filling them with white so that they're completely affected by that bone only. So then this forearm bone should go to the left forearm. Upper arm for the right should go to right arm, flood, hips to hips. This is why we named them, so it'd be easier to be able to pick them out here. Left shoulder should go to left shoulder, flood. Left hand to left hand. Right shoulder to right shoulder, right hand to right hand. Toe should go to left toe base, right toe to right toe base, right forearm to right forearm, left upper arm to left arm, left upper leg to left upper leg, right upper leg to right upper leg, left calf to left leg, right calf to right leg, left foot to left foot, right foot to right foot, teeth to head, head to head, eye back plane to head, and then eye screen to head. Now everything's bound. So when we do our rotation, let's save it. So when we do select a bone and rotate, it rotates correctly. It's not really centered in position on the sphere. But you get how that should work. We probably could have put these spheres more in the center of that shoulder joint, pulled them off, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. Okay, so now when we want to export this, let's save. We want to export this to Unity. We can also too, you'll notice that the bones are showing up red here. If I just make them save that layer, you'll notice that it's a rainbow of joints. That way I can sort of see that each, the bones are bound. It kind of gives you more of a better indication of which bones are associated with what, or that it's actually a bound skeleton. Alright, so we've saved this. That's fine. And then we're going to export to Unity. So you can just do the game exporter, or there's this send to Unity function. So we're going to send to Unity all. before we did that, you should select your Unity project. So theoretically, you've already created a Unity project in Unity, and you're going to have an actual project folder for it. So if you set Unity project, in this case, I can go and pick, let's go back out, mine is called Man with a Movie Camera. So we'll go to D, Man with the Movie Camera. We're gonna. It's in. I've got multiple projects in this folder, so we'll do the testing, and that's my project folder. So I'll just select that. There's already an assets folder there. Now when I do send to Unity all, it's going to open up into the assets folder for Unity, and I can select. I'm going to call him BenderBot 2. And then export all. So now I've exported that. I can open up Unity. Let me close out this. I can open Unity. This is the latest version of Unity, 2017. And when it comes up to the Unity folder, you'll see my testing project. I just double click on that and it'll open it up. It's importing it. Alright, so I've already got the scene set up. And what I've got in this project is this standard assets folder. So let me get rid of this BenderBot and we'll import my BenderBot 2. Put him right there. Let's rotate him so I can actually see what he's going to look like in the light. So I want to modify his materials first. Let's just select one of these objects. You see the Lambert 1. We can turn that. It's going to be a Unity standard shader. So we can crank up the metallic to create a higher reflection and the smoothness to make him look more reflective. Give it a little bit of a blue. Notice everything that has that material applied then takes on this shader. So maybe less shiny or more dull, a little bit less metallic just to give them a brightness. Then in my materials for my folders, I can go in here. So I've got eye white, which is standard material, but it's got a very gray shade to it. I want to make it really bright, so I'm going to turn on emission right here, this checkbox. Give it a color, and we're going to make it emit white. Notice how his eyes go really white then. And I can crank up the amount to even higher than 1, I think. If I make it 2, it gets really bright then, which is what we want for a screen. Because I mean, you could leave it at 1 to give it the illusion of a give it the illusion of 3D-ness, but if it's going to be an actual screen, you can just crank up the brightness and it'll wash it out. Then you don't get any shading on it. We could also take the smoothness down to get rid of some of that. Alright, so there's his eye white. The black has some shading to it too, so we want to take the smoothness on that down all the way, the metallic all the way up, and that should fix that. Then not sure which one of these is, so it's blend 2 for the eye screen here. So what we'll do is we'll say metallic, careful smoothness, You notice how it creates sort of a washes out. That's an issue with transparency, but let's see. We could create a grid texture on this thing, just a little pixel grid, and make it the image map for the albedo or the even the emission, really. In fact, let's see what it looks like with emission turned on. Let's give it a blue. So it starts to wash out what's behind it. Not too bad. We could take, so that, it's got a nice screen quality to it. We'll leave that for now. Then you could even do the detail albedo, could be a grid. Let's see if we have a texture of that. Any kind of a grid. Probably not. You can make one. I'll give you, just to show you what it could look like, I'm going to just find one that's appropriate and put it on there. So let's do, see the chevron albedo, checkerboard here. All right. Because of the way we didn't, in our Maya model, we didn't apply a UV map to this thing, the mapping goes weird on it. We can fix that real quick. We just go over to Maya, select our object that we want to fix, go into our front view like this, and then under modeling, UV, do camera based. It's going to project it with the UV editor. Here's our UV map. So we'll just go UV. We don't care that it actually fits within the UVs. So we're going to make it scale to get bigger. Something like that. Object. And then we'll just re-export our object here. So send to Unity, all. Call it VenderBot 2, export all, yes. And then when we go back to Unity, everything fixes. So that means we've got our image map mapping now. And we can, so it's not the best pixel grid, but you get the idea. And that's because it's the detail albedo. So I could also, let's don't do the detail albedo on that. Let's break that. We'll just select the image again and say none. But if we did it under our emission color and select our grid, where was it? Checkerboard. Now it's emitting this pattern in the grid. We can create like smaller pixels just by cranking up the tiling. Let's go 4. And it starts to actually look like kind of a digital grid, which looks pretty good. And we can even crank up the color. So 4. Yeah, it's pretty good. So it washes, but when you get up close, you actually see these pixels. It starts to look like that. All right, so for his teeth, we've got 2 objects. We've got our black. We've also got this blend. We're going to make the blend be brighter. I'll do an emission. Make it white, because it's a screen too. Alright, there you go. So there he is, textured. Well, materialed. We didn't really use a texture for him. except for the screen on his eyes. Alright, now we want to make him into a character and animate him. So we've got, under our assets, I've got a bunch of stuff imported from the Unity Asset Store, which is this tab. You can go and just find stuff. So there's standard assets, there'll be motion capture stuff, there's a lot of free things to play around with. The one that I've imported for this scene already is this standard assets, and there should be a third-person character in this standard assets. There's also first person, but the one that we're interested in is a third-person character. If you select the prefabs, you can actually bring that third-person character in here. This is the third-person character, and he's already set up. This prefab is set up and ready to animate. So it has, if we do a play, you can see where we've got this third-person character. I already had him in there once, but he's just going to follow our directions. So you can see he's set to animate, and I want to apply that to this Bender bot. So let me get rid of this guy. Third-person character 1, we'll get rid of him. Whoops. Delete. And we'll look at our other one. Let's just check him out. So third-person controller, if you look at the options for him, he's got an animator, which is it's a state machine with a bunch of animations applied to it. And if you look at our Bender bot, he's got an animator, but there's no, he's got an avatar, but there's no actual animations applied to that avatar because we haven't made any animations when we import him, but we can apply this avatar's animations to this using the right controller that's got the correct state machine set up for it, and I'll show you that. So then we also have a rigid body, a capsule collider, then these third-person user control scripts, which actually take and apply the animations and control them with the keyboard. So we need to set this guy up to be the same sort of object. We can add a component. So under physics, rigid body, we'll go ahead and add that. Add another component, physics. We're going to put a capsule collider on him. So then, if you look at a capsule collider, it's set up at his feet. We'll shift the height to make it long, and then we'll shift it vertically up onto his body. So we need to make it just sort of fit him. The bigger it is, the less he'll be able to collide or run up against walls. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we'll just make it a certain size and radius. Something like that. Alright, so we have that. So what else do we need? We've got a third-person controller, so then we need our 2 third-person user scripts, which should be in the third-person controller over in our project. In our scripts, you got a third-person script here and here. So we can take and select our Bender bot, and these 2 scripts, Bender bot, just drag into our component. So there's one, there's the other. Now we've got these scripts, you need to connect them to the animator. So right now he's got this, he doesn't have a controller, and his avatar is probably not even set up correctly because we haven't gone in and configured it yet, but we can do that in a sec. In fact, let's do that now. So if I select Bender bot here, you see this. If I select in my assets folder, let me find, got a whole bunch of assets. Oh, I've got a second assets folder here, BenderBot 2. You see where it's got this model, a rig, and animations. He doesn't have any animations because we didn't apply any animations in Maya. But we do have a rig, and we don't want this generic. When you first bring it in, it's going to have this generic rig applied. We want to apply a humanoid rig to it so that we can transfer, using mechanim, we can transfer the animations from this to another humanoid. So humanoid is the animation type. Go ahead and apply and create from this model. Go ahead and apply. Then we can configure this humanoid rig. It's going to ask us to save. And then it comes in with our Bender and his rigging. Everything automatically set up. And we can test it if anything didn't automatically set up. So if we had finger bones or some other bone name that didn't apply correctly for some reason, you can just click on each one of these and select, click on the actual bone section here, click on this and then select it from the pop-up that appears. So the spine, so that spine, you just double click and it'll apply it. And that's how you apply the bones. Then once you've got them set up, you can do this muscle setting and check the range of motion on things. So if we do and scroll, you'll see as extended range of motions, and you can actually limit those so that you don't end up getting collisions, or for some reason you have a character that animates slightly differently, and his defaults are causing his bones, his arms, or whatever to collide with this mesh. You can set those up in these per muscle settings, these limits. So if you did the body, so like say we don't want his head to be able to go through his knees, probably that's going to be in the sheer amount of bend that his head's capable of doing here. So it'd be his neck and his head bone. So we can choose the head and this neck up and down, which we have, which is this. We can create a limit by creating this range of motion. Let me zoom in on this. So if I take and pull that a little bit more there, then he can't actually turn his head any further than that. So that was for his neck. And we can do his head nod down up, which is this part, which actually looks pretty good, except it probably can't. Maybe it's the right to there. So if we do the head nod down up and just sort of limit that a little bit, suddenly his head can't collide through his knees. But then the same thing with his hips. So we may want to like pull his hip bones. Let's see, spine front to back. That looks okay. Chest front to back. That looks okay. His left leg and his right leg probably. So yeah, that's a really high up range of motion, so we can take the upper leg front up and limit that a little bit to there. So that'd be negative 59. Then the upper leg, and that was the left leg, so then the right leg, upper leg, negative 59. .6. Okay, that creates that. Same thing on his arms here, where they can actually collide inside of his body. We don't want that, so that'll be the in and out. Let's fix that. So that would be probably, yeah, the arm, left arm, not up and down, but let's figure out which one here. So one of these. Got it. Shoulder up and down. So the shoulder down should probably be locked at 0. So we can just pull that. Whoops. All the way to 0. Yep, that'll pull that out. Same thing on the right arm. Put to 0. Then the arm up and down should probably be limited. Something like that. So just grab this one and pull it to where it can't collide, like that. And that's at negative 38. Same thing on the right arm up and down, negative 38.83. 0.3. Yep. And the forearm. Let's see. Twist in and out, I believe. That is. Nope, that's rotation. Forearm, twist in and out. That was all the way out. This would be arm down. Nope. Forearm stretch, I think. Yep. So it's rotated. It's actually rotated in. It's weird. Let's see. So that's in. It's because the arm is rotated. So actually, yeah, the arm twist in and out should actually be something like that. It shouldn't be able to twist in. Get it to rotate there for 0. So no arm twist on the left, and then no arm twist on the right. And then our forearm stretch should go straight up and down, but it shouldn't go as far. So forearm stretch, set the limit on the negative to a little bit forward, like that. So it's negative 64. And our forearm stretch here then would be negative 64.13. And that should set our limits. So then if we check them out, those look okay. That looks good. Can't collide with himself, left and right. Ooh, yeah, that's a little much. The thing is we can set that later if the animations cause it. His twist looks good. In, out. It's okay. Roll probably wouldn't have, but our animation's probably not going to have that much either. We don't have any fingers. Alright, now that we have all that set, let's apply it. And we're done. So now, select. The way you can focus on something is if you select it in the hierarchy and just hit F while your mouse is over the window here, it'll center it. Alright, we have, the last thing we have to do is apply the controller. That'll be our third person to our bender bot. Just double click. So then if we hit play, hopefully he'll play and animate. So he's falling. So this is an issue that I've run into before, and the issue is a really simple one to fix, though you won't find much documentation on it. The trick is that when we apply the third-person character script, the ground check default on that just isn't big enough. If we change this ground check distance, it thinks that it's falling because it literally can't find the ground. Check this, take this ground check distance, and if you look at probably even our third person controller, yes, he's set at 0.3. Let's just set bender to that. And now let's try it. And he should find the ground and stand. Yeah, so he's got his little walk. We can run. He can crouch, walk, can jump, although he's got his jump set really high, but he's a robot, so he should be able to. He's not really floating on the ground, but we can fix that with our collider, so our collider is just coming down too low. Select him and shift the collider up just a tiny bit. Let's see what happens. Yep, he's down on the ground now. Anyway, that's how you go about creating a character in Maya. and then rigging it and bringing it into Unity and turning it into a character. At least a third person control, but then you can do pretty much the same stuff. Alright?